All right. Hello, everyone. Let's do this. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. This is Chris Roberts, and I am presenting Playing Through the Pain. It's being presented to you by Brains Potential. This training is going to be ideally meant to help educate you and inform, maybe perhaps entertain you through different styles of play therapy strategies for traumatized children and adolescents. So let's get started. Let's learn some things today. So some key points of this training is that in any type of treatment that you do, especially when you're looking at trauma-informed and trauma-sensitive work, having a safe environment is going to be key. Helping the person that you're working with to feel safe, comfortable, to opening up, all those are going to be very important to do that. Knowing that difficult discussions of traumatic events are going to be happening, being upfront, telling the people you're working with, especially kids, hey, this is going to be some tough stuff. There's going to be some hard things we do. Even setting timers like, hey, we're going to talk about the tough stuff for 5 minutes, but it's going to get over. We can get through this, work through that distress. Those are all sort of things. So helping to know those are coming and talking about that. But also during this, training, it may be difficult. So if you need to pause it, take a break, come back to it, know that this is coming. Trauma work is messy. Developmental milestones, there's meltdowns, there's going to be a whole lot of different things. I wish it was an exact science. Therapy alone isn't an exact science, whether you do an occupational, physical, behavioral, tons of things are not to an exact science. Sometimes you have to do the dance, the ebb and the flow of treatment. The special, case when it comes to trauma is that it's bad. Our brain tries to schism it. Our brain tries to lock it away, and it comes out in different ways. So not only is it hard and it's the dance, the ebb and flow, but then on top of that, it's something that, our body's just working on naturally coping with. So we have to break down even more barriers. The thing that I really like to try and push home anytime I work with someone that I'm using trauma-informed care or I'm helping them to become more of a survivor, not so much a victim. We want to go from that victim to that survivor mentality that, things happen that were bad. That doesn't make us a bad person. There are things that were done to me that doesn't mean anything that, I'm bad or that the world is bad. It's just these things happen and I have to overcome them. And then how do I do that? How do I become more empowered? How do I become stronger because of that? Another key point of working, and especially in this presentation, children self-titrate. They learn to, again, dance. They'll go towards and away from the tough stuff. They'll go towards and away from the trauma material. They'll go towards and away perpetrators to offenders. There's a lot of things that these kids will tend to do, but we have to learn to throttle that or walk that line of how much is pushing and exposing and how much is also then balancing of, being sympathetic and not overexposing and not pushing too hard that they then become, overexposed or it becomes detrimental to treatment. We have to make sure we're doing careful with that. That dancing to and away from the trauma, but that's with any type of hard stuff. And, especially if you're dealing with kids who may be, not typical and may have difficulties with energy regulation on top of emotional regulation, know that it's going to be a bumpy ride sometimes and be prepared that some sessions you feel like you accomplished nothing, but really you just held them there and helped them work through that and know that they have a person they can go to. They have a squishy place that they can go to. So, play therapy. I'm a big fan of Paris Goodyear-Brown, and she has quite a bit of deals and books and even, some training videos out there. But according to Paris Goodyear-Brown, play therapy and play-based interventions allow the child a nonverbal way to communicate the pain and horrors held within. So again, sometimes giving words to the feelings or helping them express a certain way that, we can't get from them. They don't have the verbal, they don't have the neurolinguistics. They may not even have the knowledge of how to form that, but they can work that out and express that out. It's an expressive modality to help fill in the linguistic gaps that traditional talk therapy has. Again, this is something that they emote. This is what they get out. This is how they get from what's inside out into the world. And then once it's out in the world, that's when we can start working. And it's almost like a clay that we can move and work through. Another thing is play therapy and play is natural. It's the natural language for children. They're already attuned to it. This is how they communicate. This is how they express. This is how they do that. We tune them into our world of using words. We teach them this is how society functions. This is what people need from us. You have the words. Now, in order to help them be successful, many of our kids, we have to help teach and educate and push through to develop those verbal skills. But we also sometimes have to be accommodating when we're trying to bring down those barriers. We're trying to bring the process to them. Think of animal cubs. Animals learn by playing. Tiger cubs in the wild, they pounce on each other, they play, they learn to hunt through playing. The way to look at play therapy is it's another tool in your toolbox. It's another medium to create with. Maybe you are good at pastels and oils, but maybe now you're taking up some clay, or you're looking at doing some knitting, or perhaps that you're looking at carving. It's a different way. A lot of times people feel that play therapy is a catch-all or perhaps a silver bullet. It's really not. It's, again, another tool that you can keep in your toolbox to help get the expression and fill in some of those gaps that traditional therapy may not be able to do. So here's a video on why play therapy works, and some look into the mindset. This is when I'm talking about teenagers, but I feel it applies to most kids and even adults at times.
Priceline can save you up to 60% on top hotels. These are all great because now is an important time.
Teenagers battling stress may in fact be using childhood comforts to get them through it. 74% of teens report having more than one symptom of stress: feeling irritable, lying awake at night, maybe getting headaches. In a New York Times article, when a teenager's coping mechanism is SpongeBob, psychologist and CBS News contributor Lisa DeMore discovers how teens are handling some of their issues. And Lisa, good enough to join us to discuss what she found. And, it's fascinating. The power of nostalgia gets into the teenage years. What a remarkable thing that you found here.
I found it just from asking teenagers what they do when they are stressed. And initially I was surprised when they started volunteering, 17-year-olds volunteering, oh, we watched The Lion King, or, oh, I go back and I reread all my Harry Potters. But as I kept hearing it, I thought, this is genius on their part. They take themselves back, and I have a great quote from a girl in the article who says, you take yourself back to a time when the hardest decision you had is, what crayon should I use to color my dress in a self-portrait? And it makes so much sense that sometimes they have to sort of go back and recharge in order to go forward.
And we were just talking, I try to encourage my girls to do something like, pull out the markers and paint a picture before you get on tablets. I feel like every time you and I sit down to talk about this, whatever, it always comes back to maybe fighting the screen wars with our children. What impact does this have on what it is that we're talking about here?
I think it has a pretty big impact. Social media, which is often what kids are doing online, is neither good nor bad, but it is everywhere teenagers go. So it's good in that it lets them connect, it lets them be playful, it lets them have fun together. That's fine. It also means that the stressful aspects of adolescence never go away from a teen's day. They are looking at one another, they are comparing how they look, they are seeing who's more or less connected. And when we were teenagers, we had time off from that. Yeah. We did that during the school day, but we went home and we stopped.
It's interesting. Put it another way, it's quantifying popularity in new and never-ending ways, and the overwhelming stresses that must level. What then, if I'm a parent, and I guess it depends on if we're talking about a 13-year-old or a 17-year-old, because that's a chasm. Yep. But what should I be looking for when it comes to stress with my children? Maybe outside the norm of what is a stressful experience.
Sure. So we want to start with the assumption that there will be stress in adolescence. Stress is normal. It's part of growth. It's part of life. Stress in and of itself is not a problem. Yeah. What we worry about is when teenagers don't have effective strategies for bouncing back from stress, or they have self-destructive strategies for managing stress. Then we worry. We don't want to see stress day after day after day from which a teen never recovers.
And the idea, and I know you got to this in your piece as well, the idea that there are two sets of problems, two sets of stresses, the ones that we can, in fact, proactively deal with and do something about, overcome, conquer, and then the ones we have to sit with and accept.
Yeah, and accept is a key word in this. I think one of the ways that psychologists break this down, and there's a great psychologist named Bruce Compass at Vanderbilt who has studied coping in teens for a lot of his career. And when I was talking with him, he said, What parents can do to be helpful is help figure out what kind of stress the teen is facing. Is it something that they could tackle? Like, okay, you're stressed by a upcoming test, let's start studying. Or is it something that they can do nothing about, like ongoing social drama in their class? So they have to accept that that is the reality, and then find ways to distract themselves, find activities they like, do things that let them recharge, and go back to the stress that they cannot manage.
Is there a takeaway for us? I'm always amazed at the dynamism and the adaptability of my children.
Yes,
and
yes.
There not a day goes by where I don't find myself thinking, God, I wish I was like that. Did you find, if nothing else, there are takeaways for us in experiencing our children dealing with stress?
For me, the takeaway for parents is not to worry if you stumble upon your 17-year-old reading Captain Underpants, right? That is what I want parents to hear. This is normal, it is quirky, but it is something that teenagers do. And another way to think about it is, well, teenagers also do other things to cope with stress, like smoke marijuana. So if you consider the alternatives, watching reruns, shooting layups are actually very effective coping strategies.
Look, we've all done it. The simple repetition in the days in which we live,
Yes.
watching somebody, hit a golf ball or fix a house, sometimes is the very best thing of all.
Absolutely.
Captain Underpants. Maybe I'll try that one. Lisa, as always, it's just endlessly fascinating, your work. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So that's an example again of why it may work, looking at the natural, how effective it can be to go back, look at nostalgia, look at how things work and interact, and just again more that it's natural, it's a language, and teens are doing it, reading Captain Underpants, shooting hoops. Sometimes we need to make that movement, we need to move through that, and we have to again drop the barriers and not make it such a almost interrogative process, and look at it as more an integrative and more experiential process to help garner some expression. So there are types of play therapy. There is the non-directive and directive. So here's are some examples of non-directive and directive play techniques. I'll go more in detail. Let's just take a look at what does a non-directive play therapy session look like.
Okay, Lillian, today we're going to be playing with toys. Okay, there's only one rule though. We have to stay in this room, okay?
Okay.
You have to be able to see yourself in that.
Okay.
Okay.
Like this.
Alright, you're putting those inside that.
I'll put this. I'll put this on
You're picking those up.
with my finger.
You're putting those on your finger.
No, there's no
And you're putting more in there.
If you notice, the clinician running the session is being very careful to use you and this and that, and he's not describing or identifying, he's allowing the child to do that. Non-directive is exactly what it sounds like. There's no directions. You're allowing the child to play as if it were a blank canvas. The playroom becomes whatever world they want to create and explore and do. But keeping yourself and your bias out of this redirection and reflection and all that, it's really just to serve as a mirror to bounce back. And what you're doing during this is you're looking for patterns. You're looking for different types of things that may come out. This is almost like an assessment while playing, and then you would go back and then process with the family, or you make inferences from it. But yeah, defining is you put that there, you put this there, and then you wait for the client to define what it is that they're playing. Now, jumping over to directive is exactly what it sounds like. It has directions. It's play that has directions. So let's look at an example of a play that could be therapeutic and it has some directions with it.
Butterflies in my stomach is an assessment activity used to evaluate the child's presenting problems and concerns. It's taken from one of my books, Creative Interventions for Troubled Children and Youth, published in...
Also, just a quick shout out, that's Leanna Lowenstein. Her playbooks are fantastic, and I highly recommend them.
1999. The activity is appropriate for children aged 6 and up. I introduced the activity by reading the following instructions to the child. This activity will...
So that's it right there. You read instructions to the child, and to skip ahead, basically the child draws an outline of a butterfly, or you can get, I highly recommend Post-it notes. You can find them on Amazon. You can get butterfly templates, coloring pages, and then they would write their worries on there. And then they would then take these butterflies after writing these worries on there, and then they would put that on their gingerbread cutout person. Let's see if we can find a picture of that cutout person.
Is worry.
So yeah, there's all the worries on the butterfly. There it is. So what you could do then is you could have the butterflies on the belly of your cardboard cutout person. You could do this with many things. We have butterflies, just that helping the child to understand that somatic complaint that could be of the anxiety in your stomach, but then gain that. And then you could overcome something maybe with a coping skill. That's what makes the butterflies go away. Just an example of how you can incorporate that and do more of getting them to express some of those things while you're playing. But being because it's directive, it has directions. So there are different modalities. I feel that play therapy is, again, it's a technique, it's a style. It's almost like an accent, if you will, but it is modalities to others. But I think you can incorporate many together. DBT mindfulness is fantastic for using in play therapy. You can use cars for steering the mind. You can use wave or water, and that's riding the wave of emotions, help with that mindfulness. That's just an example of some. CBT thought stopping, that's a fantastic one. Red light, green light statues in the park, that's an example of how we could stop negative thoughts. There's a lot of different play, and even using puppets and using action figures, dolls, miniatures are all great ways to stop negative thoughts that could be interpreted as, bad guys. Flexibly sequential play therapy, that's one of Paris Goodyear Brown's modalities. I'll elaborate more about that, but that is one that I'm a big fan of. And another one that I'm trained in and I'm a very big fan of is trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy, and utilizing some play during a narrative building or doing coping skills or some prac skills education. That would all be good. So these are some examples of that I go well, but these are by no means exclusive. There's a many more I feel to go well, but just an example of how you could use all of these and even some of these evidence-based practices inside of play therapy, just legitimizing this technique even more. So TFCBT and play therapy, Cohen, Menarino, and Deblinger, they created this trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy. In Chapter 5 of the Treatment Applications book, Cohen describes play therapy as an intervention in which the child's verbal ability may be enhanced by the stimuli of the play materials. Go on to state, play therapy allows for what can't be expressed verbally to be enacted. It's, again, putting the pieces or putting the child in charge and allowing them to find ways to get what's inside or maybe locked away or maybe compartmentalized out into the world for us to help interpret, process, and overcome. It's filling in the gaps. It's allowing, it's almost kind of like play becomes therapy spackle. It can fill in the gaps. It can create something that wasn't there before. I feel that could be really helpful. So even, the creators of trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy admit that play can do fantastic things for those kids who may be locked or stuck, or they shut down and they go into that hypo-arousal state. Fantastic ways that you could then, hey, it's a lot less threatening. It's a lot less scary. It's something that may be a bit more engaging and enjoyable if we, hey, do you want to play a game? And then while we're playing, we can talk, or allowing them to be in control of the game and empowering them when they feel like they're at such a loss and have no power in situations, allowing them to do this. They can say, boy, this is more comfortable, or yeah, I never get to be in control, or yeah, sometimes I feel scared. Those things can come out much easier because you're helping to lower those defenses and fill in some of those gaps, or perhaps even giving some verbal cues and prompts that may not have been there before. So this is an activity that I really like to do. And again, it's an expressive, it's very, it does pretty well early on, and it's kind of getting an identification process. Cohen, Menarino, Nemlinger in their TSCBT book did a great job of listing the fabulous frogs, which is where you could design a pond. And if you were a frog living in that pond, what would you want to be there? You're looking at, kind of developing discrepancies of morals and values. And is that happening in their life now? But I feel, and maybe even with some kids too, that it goes better if you can have a much more controlled environment, like a fishbowl. It starts out pretty blank. There's nothing in there, but you get to control what you put in there. So if you were a fish in this fishbowl and you were to say, I'm living in this fishbowl here, what is something that I could put in my fishbowl? Well, I would want Hogwarts in my fishbowl for sure, because I want, a place I can look around and go and do things. And I want some little bit of vegetation in there, but I'm also a big fan of movies. So let's put an outdoor movie theater screen in there. Boy, that sure looks like a pretty awesome fishbowl right there. That's something you can do in sessions. That's something that it's pretty easy to do. I feel that it's something that the kid could really get into, but also you can do it over virtual. You could do it over a webcam. You could do it just like I did, having many different pictures cut out and dragging and dropping on there. Also allowing the kids to do it. Perhaps they could share their screen and they could find pictures. Scrapbooking process, great ways to be able to do this. But again, it's meant to look at, let's look inside of ourselves. Let's find a way to find what we value and appreciate. And it's also going to start building some self-acceptance and self-reliance skills of what it is that maybe you feel good about. And if, they don't put anybody in the bowl, maybe they don't need another fish. Maybe they wish they had another fish. You'll maybe get some prompting out of there just by asking, like, oh boy, I really like what you did there. I see that, there's no other fish friends, or maybe there are tons of fish friends. I can't even find you. Maybe they don't. So looking for those patterns, looking for the potential assessments, while also allowing and helping, them to feel comfortable playing and experiencing and expressing. So moving on to flexibly sequential play therapy. It's a intervention developed by Paris Goodyear Brown. And really, here are some keys to it so we can elaborate even further on it. Again, that child self-titrating the disclosure. They dance to and from it. It helps to really embrace some of that avoidance, roll with it. It's going to happen. You have to learn how do we go with it and how do we keep treating in the moment versus, well, they shut down, there's nothing we can do, and that halts all treatment process and progress. What can we do? How can we roll with the resistance? And how can we help them and understand that they're going to move to and from the good parts and bad parts? It's huge because it restores a sense of empowerment. It does keep it pretty client-centered, helps the child to be more in control and focus on what they may be feeling, experiencing, presenting problems that they had. And because it's flexibly sequential, the steps can be skipped. And that's the great thing too, because many of us know that the world we live in, especially now, is not predictable. Things do not happen often according to plan. And maybe a child comes in with a presenting problem one week and it's a completely different situation the next, and you have to deal with that crisis of the week and you're chasing cows all over the place. But you can do this, you can move and you can skip it, and it can be flexible because it's all that experience and working through that. And I feel it's not only a key point, but it's almost like a selling point that allows it to be like, okay, I can see how this can be easily adapted and put into actual modern practice. So here are some components and the steps of flexible sequential play therapy, FSPT: enhancing safety and security, assessment, augmentation of coping, soothing the physiology, increasing emotional literacy, play-based gradual exposure, addressing the thought life, making positive meaning of the post-trauma self. Underneath soothing the physiology, there's a subset: relaxation and stress management, parents as soothing partners. Under play-based gradual exposure, continuum of disclosure, experiential mastery play, trauma narrative. So these are all big, almost building blocks. These are, if you would, bulletin, board or bullet points of parts of FSPT that allow you to say, okay, are we making progress? Where are we going? I think a lot of times it helps to have a structure when we're looking at intervention, looking at treatment. Not only be a waypoint for us as professionals and treating clinicians, but also for the family to know, almost kind of maybe it's a ticking back, or having a place to go. It sometimes can be a way to restore and hope and empower them to say, well, we got a roadmap, we know where we're going, rather than lost in this midst of problems and day-to-day, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened, we got kicked out of school, and all those. Sometimes that can help at least to say, well, we're taking it one component at a time, one step, one thing at a time, and they can be shuffled. It's okay to be shuffled. We can move some things around. Okay. Helps to get maybe a sigh of relief for some people. And funny enough, would you look at that, there's components of trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy, and reading through these: psychoeducation, relaxation, affect regulation, cognitive coping, trauma narrative, in vivo exposure, conjoint session, and enhancing safety. They sound pretty similar to that of flexibly sequential play therapy. So it's pretty exciting how all these can come together. Now, we're going to go kind of quickly through the step-by-steps and the chapters of, flexibly sequential play therapy. I'm going to give you a rundown, but understanding this of, what does it look like in symptoms? A lot of times helping kids just educate and understand, and even parents, this is what a trauma brain may look like. This is what a brain that's experienced some, bad things, had some, negative perceptions, went through some really tough stuff, that changes a brain. So maybe we need to understand what might have happened to us. Doesn't make us bad, it just makes us different. So maybe working through that, helping them understand some of that. So some of the points I like to point out: play is the language of childhood. Hey, I know you like to play. That's what you're used to. That's how you do that. It's natural and it's fun. Sometimes just reminding ourselves to have the fun, so we're not working 24/7 through the bad stuff, that there is a life outside of the work. There is a life outside of the negative. And sometimes we need to be reminded of that. Helping these kids who maybe most of their lives they're out of control. They may be only speaking when spoken to. They're to be seen and not heard. That still exists. Maybe these kids don't have that sense of power where they can't do anything they want, but they can also feel like the world is a big, dark, scary place that they have to manipulate and control themselves in order to keep themselves safe and find the good, or allowing them to be able to do that again helps them reestablish that. And also helping them educate and learn and address the symptoms. They say, oh, I kind of gain an understanding, so I now know what to do with this. Having an understanding helps me to work through that. So a lot of times I can sit and educate on the DHE level and cortisol and the adrenal glands and how the body reacts. That's going to go right over the kids' head. They're going to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Mr. Chris. That sure sounds like you're speaking some different language. But I can show them this video and help them understand about how the alarm system reacts and what it means when our brain is triggered by threatening events. So let's look at, another way we could do that.
I hate you.
So you can see it's kind of like when our brain has that trauma reaction or is triggered, we have a big explosive action thing. We burst in, we have this big amygdala flip and emotions start coursing through our body and we can't think. That's like that big giant mess that one with the axe, the minion with the axe did. And then we had the minion with the beado, that alarm system going off. Maybe the intrusive thoughts, the incessant worry, the panic attacks. It's there, it's loud, it's in our face. And even when we try and stop it, it keeps going. And actually, one of my kids would use that vernacular. The beado became his alarm. I started feeling beado. I went to my beado. That was something. So helping them understand that our brain does have an alarm system. We have that sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system that has that alarm reaction. Oh, it's like when the minions get really scared, or when they have this big thing and, man, I get so upset and I wish I didn't do that. And I wish I wasn't so bad. Now I got in trouble at school because my beado was going off. Helping them understand that, again, gaining understanding and education can really empower them, but also get them to buy in and be a bit more engaged. So enhancing safety and coping skills. That's a huge part. We want the kids to feel more safe, feel more able to function in their daily lives, and understand that the world isn't a terrible place full of terrible people, that there's just, something bad things happen. There's also a lot of good out there to find that. So helping them to do that, and then coping skills, giving them that self-regulation skills, giving them that power back, giving them the ability to be their own person and be the most successful person that they can be, and not having to be reliant, codependent, or fearful, or greatly impact that their daily functioning is not as successful. Helping them to be able to do that is going to be huge. So part of this is realizing the therapist is a megaphone, advocating, helping them maybe when they say things quietly, allowing them to say it again, giving them a safe space where they may be able to feel that hatred, that anger, that sadness that we are allowing, or even reflecting back saying, yeah, you were mad. You felt mad. Yeah, I was. Allowing them to sit in that moment and feel that, and maybe even claim some of those feelings rather than shut down and being told, oh, that's not true, or, being told that, well, that's just the way it is. Allowing them to claim that and feel that is helpful. One of the big things, and I've done this, I have a suitcase in my office use, is leaving in the suitcase, bringing stuff in, bringing the things that they can keep with you, having those negative emotions that have to follow them home, allowing me to be, hey, when you come to me, you can talk to me with whatever, and you can leave whatever you want in my office. And it was an adult female actually came in, didn't say anything to me. She put the things in my suitcase. I don't see what there was. She closed it and said, I don't want to talk about it now. I said, okay. About a month later, she pulled it out, and there were letters from her mom that she wanted to go through, but she wasn't ready in that moment. She didn't want them in her house, but she felt safe enough to keep them in my suitcase because she knew that if needed to, she could go through that. So allowing them that place to do that. Stuffies is a great thing. It's a child's toy that you can zip and has tons of zippers, and you can use that to put the bad things in. So leaving it there and allowing them to do that, but also helping understand that this is a place where they can leave it, or I'm a person they can leave it with, building that safety and coping techniques. Cleansing rituals, helping them a lot of times, playing with a bathtub or using a water table or even using like shaving cream for drawing on a table rather than using markers. And it's a cleansing ritual. They have to wash hands. Sometimes that's how they can transition out of something, but also helping them not feel so ashamed or to get over that. Those are great techniques that you can use in there. Understand that environmental factors, school, peers, family are all going to influence coping strategies. There are some kids who have no problem going out for a jog, and that's perfectly safe. Other kids, if you go out for a jog in their neighborhood, it's very unsafe. That's just a fact and the reality of what it is. So understanding that, knowing their client, knowing the techniques and skills that you're trying to teach them, but also knowing what is their environment that they're going through, what is their peer group, what is even maybe perhaps their culture. There are some cultures that this style of coping is not really acceptable for another culture style of coping. So what can we do to help out with that and understanding and then empowering them to do that? Also looking towards caregivers, especially when we look at the young kids, but I think just about anybody. Everybody's got their social group or their people that care about them and their caregivers, if you will. Where can they go? That's what is a successful person, I feel, is those who have the supports to be able to help them lean on or to pick them back up when they're having a hard time. Who they can talk to, who's able to do that, and who's actually a positive support and isn't a toxic individual, an individual that is going to suck out as much from you as you're trying to pour out. They're not really reciprocating that healthy process. So it's strengthening and empowering them, and then bringing them into sessions if need be, and teaching and educating them, because as one individual gets better and learns more and more and more, surround their social circle or help educate the social circle to rise with them rather than they don't have such a fall from grace or misunderstandings. And with anything, have some more tools in their toolbox. Not everything is going to be okay. Sometimes you have to use some deep breathing when you couldn't do progressive muscle relaxation, or you're in school and you can't do your normal push-ups out of nowhere. So you have to do some deep breathing that maybe you weren't planning before. How many more ways can we put things with them so that they feel that, when I go out in the world, I have my utility belt of tools and I have my, whole backpack full of coping, that whatever the world throws my way, I'm ready for it. That kind of confidence, that kind of security is going to help them be successful. So one of my favorite coping skills that actually was taught to me by one of my clients is Jelly Belly. So there is this book, Hey Warrior, by Karen Young, fantastic book. And it talks about, this is our amygdala. This little blue monster is our amygdala, and his little boy friend here. And the amygdala is trying to keep this boy safe, trying to help him, trying to do all these things for this little boy. But really, we have to learn to keep our amygdala safe, saying, hey, warrior, amygdala, I know you're trying to fight for me right now, but I'm okay, or I can handle this. Or amygdala, I know you're fighting for me, you're a warrior for me, but sometimes I need to be able to do this, and we need to slow our amygdala down. And one of the ways we can do that is having Jelly Belly. So this is basically a diaphragmatic breathing skill, but imagine you're putting a big bowl of jelly on your stomach, and as you breathe up and down doing your belly breathing, you try and see if you can make the jelly jiggle. Well, what the kid taught me is he put his stuffed animal on his belly, and when he would breathe up and down, he'd try and make the animal fall off of his stomach. Sometimes he'd breathe a little too fast, but the point is, it got him. He remembered diaphragmatic breathing. He remembered jelly belly breathing. He remembered to use that process, and rather than getting upset and completely losing it, or getting lost in his emotions, he was able to control a little bit more. And once he started getting that control and that confidence, it really started progressing further along. So looking at soothing the physiology and parents as partners, helping to control that body, the natural reaction that comes with our physical stuff. A lot of times when I talk with parents, being the calmest amygdala in the room, that's how you can be successful. A lot of times things get heated, things get very escalated rather quickly. Feelings are tough. What can we do, even though we may be hurting at the moment? What can we do to keep ourselves calm? What can we do to keep our amygdala? Because someone needs to steer the ship. Someone's got to fly the plane. When things are going south, something needs to happen. And a lot of times kids will look to caregivers, will look to the adults in their life to say, well, things aren't going well. Please, at least let me know you got this under control. At least let me know that, we're going someplace and somebody knows what they're doing here. That's something that is very important. One of the things that I like to do too with kids is body mapping. Some kids can do well tracing their whole body on big pieces of paper, but also using gingerbread cutouts or gingerbread men templates, or even making, gingerbread men or girl cookies is a way to do that. Helping, where do they feel their feelings at? Do they feel anger in their hands? Does their face get red? Do they start gritting their teeth? What do they do with their physical body? Anger thermometer, I have an anger gauge. It kind of works well with these zones of regulation, but helping them to understand that there are different levels of anger. Some kids just say, I just get mad. It's the same every time. I just always get mad. Well, there are different degrees of that, helping them, get out of that all or nothing thinking, increase that cognitive flexibility. And conjoined parents, some parents feel that that's all there is all or nothing. Well, just get angry. They just get angry. Helping them get out of the all or nothing thing. Or it's never going to get better. It's never going to get better. Well, it's never going to get better, especially if we don't try and do something with it, if we don't try and do more. So I feel that in bringing them in, allowing the parents to be able to talk and share, but educate them as well, so they're progressing and gaining as many skills as the child or client may be, but also allowing the child to have a safe place where they could talk with the caregivers. They could share with the caregivers what they're doing and how they're moving, and maybe some frustrations and problems that they're having. So perhaps doing that would be another way to do that with conjoined sessions. So one of my favorite ways that we could do a activity is bug and a wish. This is a great communication activity where you have a bug. You could draw a little bug, or you could do a coloring template, and a wish, a shooting star. And this is a communication. It bugs me when I wish. It's a way of teaching I statements. Some I statements can be kind of tricky for kids to utilize, but again, teaching them, I would like it if we could communicate better and be more. It's very difficult for a child to talk that way. So it bugs me when I wish. It keeps it on them centered, but also helps them to practice expressing I statements, all those things. So that's a great activity that I really like to use. Paris Goodyear Brown has a great acronym that she encourages using the SOOTHE. So when talking to caregivers about engaging a child, especially those who may have experienced some really tough stuff, use this acronym to remind how we engage with them. First, use a soft voice and soft face. Are we going to be perceived as a threat when we're really trying to either correct, redirect, even sometimes just engage, period? Where are we coming and what are they going to be perceiving and interpreting our actions as? Organize the child experience. Sometimes things are so chaotic and their life is nothing but chaos, and it's so hard for their brain to get still. It's like a bunch of bouncy balls in a hallway. Help me understand it. Oh, I can start breathing because things are in order, things are in place. It's not just random stampede of thoughts up there. I can actually process and do things. Offer choices in a way to save face. That vulnerability, no one really reacts positively when they're scared, embarrassed, and vulnerable. It's like backing an animal into a corner. It's not going to come out, because that's usually when we get more angry, because we just don't want to feel or appear weak. So giving them a way to say, hey, it seems like this is tough. Let's just move on now. We'll deal with it later, but let's just stop throwing the toys and we will talk about it in a second. Let's just go to a room and calm down, allowing them an out, giving them a way to get through that. Some, and depending upon the person, the relationship, touch or proximity can be great. Just being near a client, down on their level, not standing above them, sitting next to them in a couch can be very helpful for them to feel connected. Some kids, that's not going to work so well. They don't do well with proximity, but know the individual you're working with and knowing, is this the way they can help soothe, or would this be a bit too much stimulating for them? Really big part is end, and in the words of Elsa, let it go. No dead horses. We're not beating dead horses here. Don't go back. Well, remember that time. Remember that time. You know what people love? To be reminded of their mistakes. Nobody likes that, whether you're a kid or an adult. To bring it up as ammunition is unfair. In any positive relationship, you have to move on and accept that that individual made a mistake, especially when it comes to kids who don't know how to be They don't know. They didn't come into this world with a set of instructions. They're learning as they go. So they make mistakes, and some of them are huge mistakes, but they still need to learn and do that. So just as how we don't want to be beat up for when we make mistakes, kids don't either. Let it go. Give them the education. Give them some consequences and move forward so they can then be successful rather than being stuck on what's going on. So this is that bug and a wish. Ladybug, shooting star, great coloring techniques. You can freehand it. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, and getting some puppets and some miniatures as well. But it bugs me when I wish. Some great communication styles that you can work on and practice kids. And this does pretty well over virtual sessions as well, because you can, you could color for them on the other side. You can have the parents go back and forth. You can flash up a screen, a bug, a wish, a lot of different ways you could work on integrating this intervention. So let's go to chapters 7 and 8, increasing emotional literacy and continuum of disclosure. So if we're going to be talking about our feelings, we probably should know more about our feelings. Some kids have no idea what a feeling maybe even be or feels like, and they feel that their sadness is anger, when really it's sadness, or their anger is always anger. It doesn't matter. I don't get anxious ever. Or I believe some of your anger is coming from anxiety. So helping them understand, building that ability to look inwards and gain that insight and look and feel and think, oh, this is what this may be. Just understand that. And then also, now that you've learned some of those feelings, let me understand some of those feelings. Let me get some of those things. Can I borrow some of those feelings that you got? Can you give me some so I can look at it and process it, help you get some more skills from it? And this is tough because it's boring. Kids, no one really likes to share their feelings, but kids are especially scared. And, perhaps they've gone through some stuff where showing their feelings made them weaker and it opened them to possible attack. But also, could it be culture that we don't talk about these things? This is just not what we do. We don't do that. We don't talk about that. So having to work through that and process this. If we can incorporate some play and some fun things, that makes it a lot easier. So mood manicures is given to me again from one of my clients. I know she would come in and her nails are always on point, looking great. Fingernails did well, and she wanted to become a cosmetologist. And I said, hey, man, your fingernails are fantastic. I have to say, they're really good. She said, oh, yeah, I do them for a reason. And I said, well, they always got different colors. He said, those colors are how I feel. I said, okay. So what I do is I keep track of the good days, the days that, aren't so good. Maybe I felt more sad. I keep track of that, and each finger is a day, and I have those colors, and a color represents things. I was like, oh, okay. And I've done it with a couple other. We've done it by, tracing our hands on paper. Actual clients who can use and wear nail polish have done it on the finger. It's a great way of journaling, essentially, but it's a lot more fun. It comes across as an activity that's fun versus a journaling. Ugh, I don't want to write. I don't want to journal. Ooh, painting my nails, that's a different story. Tons of individuals that I've worked with at least want to, draw it or write it, and some, get very elaborate. They're witch nails, and, this is the Hulk's hand, and all these kind of things. And that's great, but it's just keeping track and helping them to learn and understand, we have and experience feelings in different levels and varieties, and then we work on intensities, how they can do that. Another one is mood mask, and this was given to me by a client who very much into Deadpool, big fan of Deadpool. And he said that Deadpool wears a mask so no one can see his face. So that's kind of what he does. He puts all these emotions and feelings, and this is what he is putting out there, putting that self out there to other individuals. But on the inside, it's totally different. He's hiding what it is. So kind of coming up with that, making a mask, making a superhero mask, making this front that we give out onto others. And this is great, especially with adults too, because they, that's a big part of living to work in the world. What are we presenting? What are the self? What are we showing to people? But on the backside, is that true? Is that what's happening? Is there some pain and hurt and insecurities and things that we don't want other people to know that's on the back? So cutting out a mask on paper, showing them both sides, writing on it, maybe making a PowerPoint presentation where on one side of the mask, we type in little feelings that we're presenting to other people and things. And on another part, we do another backside of the mask and type out blah, 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 what maybe we would be scared of. But it's, again, looking inward, building some of that insight, but also understanding and reducing some of that all or nothing thinking. So experiential mastery play and trauma narrative work. We built this foundation of we're looking inward, you're understanding things, we're giving you some skills, you got some tools to do. All right, now we're going to jump in. We've told you about the swimming. Now we're actually going to get in the water. So this is putting it into practice, if you will. Experiential mastery play is a form of gradual exposure. We're going through it. We're talking about it. We're slowly giving them the skills that they can experience the negative things. We're going to be triggering some events, eliciting some responses and feelings, but can they do it? We're not going to overwhelm them all at once. We're not going to slam them with that negative, like, here's all the bad feelings. We're going to have to work through that. This is where the client begins to become more empowered and moves from the victim to survivor. As they're gaining more skills, they can sit, I felt sad for 5 minutes and I still lived. Oh, I was able to go 10 minutes this time. I was able to actually say perpetrator's name. I could actually talk about dad dying on Halloween, or I could actually say dad's name I haven't said in forever. Those sort of things that can come out through these interactions, through these play, techniques and skills, and actually experiencing it and being in there where we can talk about anger, but sometimes until we actually get mad and you want to scream at me and I tell you, hey, this is where we're at, let's hold and feel and do, and you have to make it, maintain together so we can still go outside and play soccer. Sometimes doing that and then saying, hey, you did that. Remember last time you did that? You got really mad, but you calmed down in like 10 minutes. That was great. Way to go. Let's see if we can, keep working on that. That gains that not only exposure, but then gains that confidence. Become a part of it. Become a part of the role play. Become a part of the play. Maybe you're the good guy. Maybe you're the bad guy. Yesterday, I was playing with a kid and we were playing Pokemon, and I was one Pokemon 1 second. I was another Pokemon the next second. I was a good guy. I was a bad guy. But because he needed to fill that role, and he went so fast, it was almost like you could see that the dam of emotions had burst for him, and he wanted to do it. And it ended up at the end of the day, he said he didn't like people being mean. And it all came from me playing Pokemon with him, where there was good guys, bad guys, good Pokemon, bad Pokemon. But being a part of it, while you're part of it, you're kind of like addressing and assessing and looking, but be a part of it. So helpers in an experiential mastery play, it's kind of like, the Elliot and Pete's Dragon, that when an individual needs us but doesn't want us, that's when we're there. But when they want us and don't need us, it's time for us to go as helpers. So that's something that we really need to do. And it's kind of like, many of my kids, they say, it's like the Avengers. You have people come and help and we need the superheroes, but we really want them to be their own Avenger. We want them to be their individuals. We want to be their own superhero so that they can do that. And one of my favorite things we like to do is, as we're organizing the chaos, we're trying to help some of those bouncy balls in the hallway come into one organized and, concise and actual situation where the child can put together, is to organize in the chaos and develop maybe a timeline or a narrative. And googly eyes, the first thing you saw, second thing you saw, hiding googly eyes in a box of rice. And as they pull out the googly eyes in the rice, or even you could hide googly eyes in one of those like sensory bags where it's got gel in it and they have to look through the gel to try and find the eyes. Each time they find the eye, or maybe you could put noses or ears, you could work through the senses. You're taking this very likely, compartmentalized, repressed situation and memory, and then trying to draw it to light through the positive, rather than saying, tell me what you've seen when that happened. That's very interrogative. It's going to be in their face, probably going to get a shutdown reaction. But if we can play about it and I can kind of slip it in and they can come out and deal with it because they're having fun, they're already dropped some of those defenses, it's going to be a much more effective way for me to help them process and deal with that. So let's look at challenging some cognitive distortions, maladaptive thoughts, and the negative self-images. These are those cognitive dissonance type things that we really have to work through to help move them from that victim to that survivor. This is the empowering process. How can we say that your stinking thinking isn't going to help you out? Yes, while that helped you to survive and get through and deal with all the negative stuff, that isn't where we need to live and be. This is what happened. This is what we do go forward. So helping them to change those thoughts is really one of the big pieces of moving them from the negative to the positive, helping them overcome that hill. There's a lot of different things of stop and change your thoughts using coins, the stinking thinking where we smell, stinky things, like onions and things like that. And that's how they overcome it. I've done those before. But even like walking and then, smelling like, oh, what do you smell? Or that flower, that's like a good thought. What's a good thought that we have? Or, oh man, there's a dead fish over there. I can kind of smell it from here. What does that smell like? We have the luxury to be able to do that. And I think that's, again, a way we can experience and play with them. So now we get to make sense of the post-trauma self. So helping the kid realize that they are not schism into this other, into this monster or freak show or this, used individual. They are a person with skills and abilities, and now they've got all these great things. They know more about their feelings. We've increased their emotional literacy. They know what their body's going to do to react. So they've decreased some of that reactivity. They got an understanding. It makes sense, or made as much sense as it possibly can, where it's not just bits and pieces and flashes here and there. It's an actual thing. They can, be soothed by their supports. They actually know how to get to their supports. They know how to reach out and deal with things. We've overcome some of those negative distortions. They've got a whole utility belt full of coping skills, and then some that they can do that. And now there's a sense of safety that the world is not out there nipping at their heels every time they step out the door to try and make them feel bad or do bad things. They have safety and that they feel that they can live and breathe and react in the world. One of the great skills that I love to do that, and this is an activity that is the new you. So let's take a look at this activity of helping that kid become the best of us, I mean, accepting and understanding their success by overcoming some of the negative things that they had. So you got Band-Aid, scissors, and gingerbread template. You cut out the gingerbread template. And then on the gingerbread template, you write the negatives. Negative thoughts they feel about themselves, or perhaps their old selves at this time, depending on where you're at in treatment. Yeah, negative views and thoughts they've had of themselves. Then encourage them to rip it up. That's not talking confetti here. Just larger pieces. Rip up the old you, because we're getting rid of the old you. These are your past stinking thinking behaviors. These are your negative thought distortions. Then on the Band-Aids, you're going to write things that can help you, your supports. Family, dog. Again, the supports that are going to hold you together. So you put the Band-Aid on top of these ripped pieces of paper, and this is going to be what heals you, that supports you, that helps you feel better. That's going to create you from the old you into the new you. Now with the new you put together, what are some positive things that maybe you've learned about yourself or that you feel about yourself that maybe you didn't before? So that's an activity to do that. And now we couldn't talk about play therapy if we didn't talk about sand tray. It's a very, very helpful and experiential and influencing way to deal with things, but it is an art form. It is easy to understand, but very difficult to master. So, in the hands of those, that the C.G. Jung is a big proponent of the sand tray therapy and almost the grandfather, if you will. But he is quoted as saying, "Often the hands know how to solve the riddle the intellect has wrestled with in vain." Kind of like that, the hidden horrors locked inside. We can't use the words to describe it, so we have to do the activities or the movements or letting our body to do that. So we have, Swiss Jungian analyst Dora Kaif, sand tray is a form of therapy. So it was originally designed as a form of therapy that gives clients the opportunity to portray rather than verbalize feelings and experiences, often accessible and are difficult to express in words, helping them tap those hidden things that they couldn't before. The sand tray is a safe and finite environment. The client has the ability to control and manipulate, helping them to be in control. Again, giving them that blank canvas, much like the non-directive type of play does, that they can set a world and an environment they can be in. I feel it's kind of almost similar like Minecraft, where you can do whatever in this, you can build this, and we look for patterns and techniques in there. So something I've done is I've created a virtual sand tray. And a virtual sand tray is just kind of exactly what it sounds. We have all these different miniatures. You have these different, little bits and pieces here that maybe a cope with life. And then we have a sand tray. So let's say we're asking a kid, let's go to the sand tray and just tell me something about dad. And they may be, picking out different pieces here and putting it all different areas. And this is great, again, for if you do it virtually, you can have the kid, describe them to you as you're screen sharing, or you can do all those things while you're doing a virtual session that, you maybe couldn't have before. So this is an example of, one time I had a kid, they tell me that they think their dad is so strong that he could throw a rock at a shark, and they have this very big protective factor because they had a negative experience with their mom and some past, trauma and abuse, that this is how they describe their dad. But I wouldn't have got that if I would have said, hey, how do you feel about dad? Fine. I didn't get this whole that they, feel he's heroic and has this heroism side to him that maybe that wasn't known before. And again, that they probably couldn't access that verbally because it was locked up. They didn't have that. So again, a big part of, having to do this is it's hard to do play therapy virtual. We don't have them in our office with us. So we've had to learn to adapt. So I've been able to utilize some, superhero therapy, where what could we do looking at massive superheroes and how would superheroes interact, using Roblox, using some free online games that I can actually interact and engage with, that I can't play with you in person in my room, but we can log on to the same lobby of Roblox, screen sharing some flash games like Connect 4, using my local library for bibliotherapy, picking out books, screen sharing, reading the books through the screen share, and helping them to be able to do that. Doing a 3-color challenge. I love the 3-color challenge. That's where the kid picks a topic, picks something that we're going to draw, and they choose the colors that you use. And then it's fun, especially if you have, some caregiver involvement. The caregiver picks whose picture was better. And I always kind of say, oh man, I don't know, Mom, their cat looks so much better than mine. I really like the way they use that green that I picked for them to be able to use, to kind of have some more engagement skills. But again, that's how you can do a 3-color challenge. There's a bunch of whole YouTube videos out there too of, kids content creators doing 3-color challenges. Having a Lego build where you challenge each other to Legos, where, you can only build with the red Legos, or they tell you have to build an airplane in 30 seconds, doing that where you have your set of Legos, the kid has, of course, their sets of Legos, and we can do that aside. But even, for older ones that, can, access the computer during the virtual session, playing this website, playunofreak.com, you can create a free lobby and the kid can join you. You can play Uno that way. So even though we may not be able to be in person together, we can still be together and work through this and play, and allowing the hands to have something to do, or even the mind to sit while we're playing, connecting. When we ask questions, usually the defense is lowered, so we should be able to do that. So let's make meaning. We've talked now for 56 minutes about these things. What on earth does this all mean, and what are we talking about here? So what makes play therapy effective? It's very empowering, and because of the self-titration, it helps to lower that. Having a time frame, allowing the child to move things through, and having a roadmap and say, okay, here's what we're working on, but allowing them to say, when is enough? When can I focus on just playing? When can I actually let some things out? Maybe there's some unresolved thing that keeps bubbling up to the surface that I just got to get out. And because we set this safe environment, they feel okay doing that. Now they feel that they have all these tools on their tool belt. They have all these skills and abilities that weren't there before. That now that they can do that, and they feel much more empowered through that. It again allows the client to portray rather than verbalize. Maybe there's some cognitive delays where they didn't have the ability to verbalize that. Maybe they haven't got the necessary skills to do that. Maybe because just even saying a certain word completely wrecks them for the day, but we can get them to play where at least they can act some things out that helps to express that because they couldn't get the words out yet. It fills in the gaps. It's therapy spackle. It helps to fill some of those things and reading between the lines that, some regular cognition doesn't necessarily get us there. And my biggest proponent is a way to move from victim to survivor. We learn to be a resource, help the child or individual to learn to rescue themselves rather than relying on somebody others, so that they can learn to go out in the world, be successful, and be a great person that can help change this world and make it even better. So that's really why I want to look at all of these things. I really like this quote. It's from Rita Pearson. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists they become the best they can possibly be. That's how I want to look at kids. That's how I want to look at adults. That's how I want to look at really anybody, that we help them to become the best person that they can possibly be. And some of that means working through these negative things and getting through that. And I'm a big superhero fan, if you haven't noticed by now, but in the words of Captain America, I may not always be able to choose my battles effectively. I'm going to make an effort to choose the battles that matter. I'm really kind of viewing this as how can we help that child learn to fight those battles that matter to them, to talk about the things that matter to them. We're not looking at this as a factual, this happened, that happened, this is the trauma the way it was, as in more, what was your perceptions? How can help you feel more successful and confident and help you to be able to get through the things that you're feeling, through these things that matter to you, so you can battle these and feel more empowered and do the things that you need to be able to do. I welcome any and all questions. You can submit them to me. You can find my information at brainspotential.com. Also reach out. I'm more than happy to help. But I really appreciate your time. Here's my references. And go out there, do some playing, have some fun, and look at, how can we naturally help individuals to deal with the stuff that they're dealing with and go through the things that they are and help them to be the best, most successful and possible person that they possibly can. Thank you and have a great day.